not a good thing at all.
Gluten is usually in the pet food industry, and I brought some samples of that. If you see a canned food that has wheat gluten in it, for example, it can be used, and back in 2007, it was in the middle of one of the biggest pet food industry recall of products, and it killed a lot of cats back then and dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, this was wheat gluten supposedly, but what it actually contained was melamine, and it was a substance, and it was sold by an unscrupulous, ingredient processor in China to many manufacturers. They bought it on price, and it shouldn't have been in there in the first place. That's the thing. The gluten is not something that's right for cats' digestion to begin with, and glutens are there to substitute for protein.
Okay.
That's the other part too. They're often substituted
Right,
for protein.
it's bumping up the protein
Meat
percentage
protein, which they
artificially.
can use.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
So
But
here's another
yeah.
example. 9 lives. I just did the little formula on this. 45% protein. 45% carbohydrates. Okay, but for some reason it's going to help maintain urinary tract health. Helps promote a healthy immune system. Helps support healthy digestion because it has dietary fiber in it. Now,
Legally, they could probably put one nutrient in there that supports urinary health. That
I will
1%
bet
they
you.
can put that.
I will bet you that somewhere in here there's going to be salt.
So they drink more, and that's why they're right.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that's the prescription food.
There you go.
That's the dry prescription food that vets will put a cat on that has had a urinary tract infections. It encourages them to drink more. So they're getting a high carbohydrate food, but they're drinking a ton because that's what they need to drink. So why not put them on an all-can diet so they get what they need and get rid of the kibble and the carbohydrates?
So what you're going to do is, if you decide to feed this and you read it, okay, you're going to feed your cat 45% carbohydrates when we already talked about they can't digest carbohydrates. We're going to throw some salt in their diet, and kibble's supposed to be wonderful for cats because we're going to have healthy teeth, but we're going to sit there and just totally make a mess of their insides. Adding salt to a desert animal does not seem like a very, very good idea.
It goes against all the innate systems of the cat.
I'll point out one of the objections that I get from people. People will tell me that, oh, you are 80% 85% moisture. I'm paying for water. At the end of the day, I'm still 10% protein. 10% of 3 ounces, okay, is still 10% of 3 ounces. Whether I'm 78% moisture or 85% moisture, okay, at the end of the day, your cat needs protein. I'm 10% protein. I'm less than 2% fat, and I'm higher in moisture. The only reason why this gets higher in moisture is you got to think of a crock pot. You take chicken and you stick it in a can and you cook it. What's going to happen to the chicken? The moisture from the chicken is going to leave the chicken. Hydration by meat. The most of the moisture that we put in here, we put water in here sufficient for processing, but the rest of the moisture is from the meat itself. You put a chicken, like I was saying, you put a chicken in a crock pot, you'll see, you could put a whole chicken in a crock pot, cook it for 8 hours, what happens? The thing's underwater when you're done cooking it. It's moist as anything because it's in its own juice. You didn't add any juice in there. So at the end of the day, 10% is 10%. 1.4% fat. People will say, oh, that's too low. You said cats need fat. They need fat. They don't need a lot of it. What do you want to pay for? So, and the other little secret is that 78% moisture is a number that is it's a labeling number, basically. You'll walk around the store, you'll probably find a lot of stuff that's at 78%. And the only reason why everybody cuts it off at 78% is because it's a pate. And if they go to 79, they at that point have to call it a soup or in gravy. By AFCO law, they have to call it a soup or in gravy. And it would look pretty funny if you had a pate that was like a pate and it sat there and said blah 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 soup. So they have to go at 78% moisture, not because they want to, because they have to, because if they go higher in moisture, they have to call it soup or listed in gravy.
That's why maybe I can add water to it.
How'd this renegade get here?
Yeah, I think so, right?
It should be on yours. I think I just dropped it there. That's another one that's funny.
2%, the 2.7 max.
We wind up adding water to our canned food.
Yeah.
We
Some
crack
of
it
them-
open like a crack a BFF or whatever, and we actually drop in a little bit of extra water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you
That's
guys have
actually a good
do you have
idea.
any
It's not
questions?
easy.
You should switch to Maruga because you don't have to have
Taurine.
water.
What's that?
Taurine is in
Nice
everyone.
and juicy.
It's lots of water in that, yeah.
It
And we
is,
do
yeah.
we feed a lot of Maruva at home actually.
Our
That's
guys
one of,
love it.
yeah, we
they
feed a
love
ton of that.
Taurine is a essential amino acid for a cat. It's for their heart and liver function. There's a little thing that we like to say: you could feed a dog cat food, but you can't feed a cat dog food because if it doesn't have taurine in it, it could damage the cat. So you know, you could a dog can eat cat food with no problem. You give a dog extra taurine, it's good for their heart.
Back in the late 80s, that changed. I was in the industry when, let's say, and I was working in a Purina feed store at that time. So before that time, you know, there was no scientific data to support the dietary need for the additional amino acid there, the taurine. So when that data came out, everybody had to add taurine to their grain-laden meow mixes and cat chows and all that other stuff to put in the dietary need because it's essential to a cat. Taurine is common to meats, but since they're so deprived of meat, there wasn't enough taurine in their cat food. So taurine started showing up in all the cheap cat foods. Had to be added just as far to meet AFCO demands, or I guess new scientific data that showed the need for it. Yep.
Any other questions?
One cat with inflammatory bowel disease who's constantly hungry. Probably because he's not absorbing the nutrients he needs is a theory, whatever. This cat is constantly hungry, constantly eating. And his brother is a nibbler, will not eat a decent amount of food at one time. So I know that it's recommended you feed a cat twice a day. Doesn't work with my cats. They need access to food. Sometimes during the workday, I'm out for 10 hours. Dry food's nice and handy. You can let it sit and they can go to whenever they want. How long can something like this sit out? Good question.
I usually wouldn't leave it out for more than 2 hours. I mean, it's...
I leave mine out all day.
You do?
I do.
They
we
come
do.
back to it.
They come back to it.
They don't mind it.
But
They
does it
eat
go
it and
bad?
it's still okay.
No.
I
Yeah,
mean, if
it's
your
still
house
okay.
is like 90 degrees, maybe now, but.
Yeah, we
I'm
haven't had
obligated.
any issue
I'm
with that. They
obligated
come
to
back.
say
2 hours. I think cats are fussy. They're gonna like room temperature, freshly opened food. Some customers have told me that they take it out of the fridge. They won't eat it. It really depends on your cat. We put 3 bowls of canned food down in the morning, and I pick them when I come home from work. They're empty, and I just fill it up again with canned food because that's what all 3 of ours get. So they're usually empty. If they don't get sick. Their litter box is maybe a little softer than it should be. I don't know, Chris, if you want to address.
It's not that it
Can't-
should be, but it
Well, I
just
mean,
then
it's not
maybe if they
always
eat
it's not always firm. But then again, we switch. They get something different all the time. So, but it is a litter box and it's covered. And
Is that okay too, to switch up brands or types or flavors?
if they tolerate it, yes.
Actually.
No, you don't agree, Chris?
no, variety's
Oh,
fine.
yeah, variety's
fine. Actually,
Never.
I would say that you always want to keep moving around. Not necessarily lines, but flavors, because you don't want your cat to get bored. You know, if you sit there and take home this chicken and your cat loves it, and all you buy the cat is chicken, you're going to sit there and be in no time at all, cat's going to hold his nose up to it. How would you feel if you were fed the same thing every day? You know, there's a couple of other things too. Like you want to switch up the variety, and we don't believe cats are fussy. They just don't like what they're eating. I mean, give them some real food.
Just crap on the internet says you need to like introduce certain amounts of food when you're changing up.
If
I
you
know
want to
what's
know
right
what, I
before we-
wholeheartedly agree when you're dealing with kibble.
Kibble.
Kibble is a
Okay.
completely different animal. When you want to slow transition kibble. I like to look at kibble as just in general. You think about the numbers on a bag of kibble. It's like 30% protein, 20% fat, and it's all in that little cup, right? 1 cup of food, that's what you get. You know, that's like protein powder for a human, or like nutrients. That's a shot of nutrients in like one sitting. You know, where this way it's like 1 ounce per pound. You know, it's real food. So it's 10% protein. You got to sit there and eat a good portion of it to get to that number. But when you sit there, 1 cup of kibble, you're going to sit there and have all this stuff going on: protein, fat, this, that. You know, real food, got to eat more of it to hit that number.
Okay.
Now think about a protein shake. A protein shake is like 40 grams of protein in 1 scoop, and drink it, and you got your protein. Bang, done. In order to get 40 grams of protein, you need to eat like 3 pieces of chicken. You know, your average piece of chicken is like 20 grams of protein. You're gonna have to eat like 2 to get there.
How many cans a day would the average cat if they were just on?
1 ounce, 1 ounce per pound.
And there's
And there's
3 ounce
3.
cans.
Right.
What are the big ones?
There's 3 ounce cans. There's 5.5 ounce cans, and there's 10 ounce cans in some varieties. These big cans are actually dog food cans. We make
Oh.
dog food in the same fashion. We follow the same principles on the dog food. The same principles on the dog food is a little bit different. It's still less than 3% carbs, less than 2% fat, but that's going to be more for a solution for your dog. You know, dogs with pancreatitis don't need a lot of fat, so that's good. You know, I'm not going to go too far into the dog food. Dogs with cancer, you want to limit carbohydrates. You're feeding raw, you're going away. You don't want somebody to deal with raw because the person who's dog sitting has kids. You get a bunch of cans of these. The raw people will lean towards these type of cans because they're high quality. Elimination diets. We know there's limited ingredients in here. If you're trying to figure out if there's an allergy, this is a great way to do it. Rotating. People like to rotate between raw and some other things. Throw that in the rotation. So we dabble in dog food too.
What's coming down the pike for Warwick? Any new flavors? Are you allowed to say?
Not privy.
Are we gonna see it next week?
No, Anthony might tell you. But
Gordon and I are traveling down to Orlando. I know it's tough. To the global pet show. So we're going to see all the manufacturers for all the products that we have in our store. So it's where if they're buying shows, it's where we go and find new products, and a lot of the lines that we carry here in the store are introducing new items, new flavors, new everything. So
our most upcoming thing is going to be a treat. It's going to be a freeze-dried treat made in a human food freeze-drying facility in the UK. Interesting thing about that is it's going to be chicken and fish. You'll appreciate this. You know, a lot of the manufacturers, there's a lot of soot in the bags. You know, 3 ounces of freeze-dried cost you like $13. When an ounce of it's soot, because it's like flakes, it's frustrating. We're manufacturing them in a tube, and the sifting process that from this facility is absolutely phenomenal. There's virtually no soot at the bottom of the tube, so you're getting what you pay for.
the ones that are coming out.
And the chicken tastes good. We've already tried it. It's been taste tested by the staff.
And a freeze-dried, I mean, it's like crack to my cats. I call them my kids, my furry kids. I hate to use the
And the
drug
kids love the
reference,
freeze dried too.
But they just, I mean, I could just open a bag of something from across the house, and my big orange boy, he comes running, and he goes just nuts for
You
a
want to see
freeze-dried.
you want to see if you have a quality freeze dried product. I don't know if anybody buys freeze dried, but get a glass of water and drop it in, and watch all the moisture go back into it, and it'll look like the product that it is. It's pretty nifty. You know, we did that, and it like plumped up into a really nice big piece of white chicken.
Filet.
And it was like we're doing it in
On the
2
grill.
flavors, fish and chicken, but you know, palatability is there. So and that's the other thing. I mean, when you're feeding a product like this, You know, that chicken, where'd it go?
It's